I was very excited about this unit and looking at the American Civil Rights Movement. It's something near and dear to my heart. Looking at the page, it's pretty inspiring having Dr. King here. And right before his speech, the only thing that I would recommend is adding the attribution here for this picture. And you essentially cover what is going to be in the unit by talking about civil rights. Something to maybe consider. I know it's popular to believe that the American Civil Rights Movement consists of the 1950s, 60s, and maybe even part of the 70s. But in fact, it goes back a lot further, post Reconstruction after the Civil War. So just something to consider that the civil rights movement actually means different things to different people. But other than that, you've captured the essence of it, and I think you've allowed flexibility for students to go back further than what's typically expected. I like you're very clear on your performance and participation expectations, and your social media guidelines are really geared toward uh, kind of structuring behavior, but not in a finger wagging, don't do this, don't do that, but more of a sense of this is how we as a community behave online. And I think that appeals more to students than the don't do this, you must do this that we typically see in social media guidelines. So I like what you've done here and your checklist on what to do before hitting send. The only thing is this kind of throws it off this 4 questions to ask yourself. So I'm pretty excited about what's next in terms of the first steps. So let's see. Okay, so we're moving on to the first steps. And in first steps, you outline here what's needed: the Emoto, the Digo, Pinterest, Google Docs, YouTube, and WordPress. So that I think covers essentially everything that we're supposed to cover. We needed 6 different ones, and you've covered the sharing, the social bookmarking, as well as I guess with Pinterest, it's the photo and you and sharing, the collaboration with Google Docs, and the video with YouTube. Although I think the Pinterest and the YouTube might actually be along the same lines. And then you have the WordPress. So I guess that would be the blog section. So it looks like you might be missing one if you consider that Pinterest is um, more of a picture site, but I guess it could be used as curation as well. That's right, it's listed here as curation. So my bad, you've got them all. um, you're here with the elements of what's of how to get each of these started for students who don't know how to use them, and you have students posting a YouTube video about an issue, an event, and comment. Um, Clicking here to the mini assignment, I'm going to open this in a tab here so we can see it in a separate thread. I don't know if you've given the students enough uh, guidance on what they're to post, like an issue, an event, or a person in the American Civil Rights Movement. Again, the time period. I mean, I'm glad that you've left it open so the students could interpret that for what they think it means. Just a little bit more detail about what you want, and then it's good having them comment on 2 videos posted by their classmates. And so we'll be moving on to learning activities next. Okay, so as we move on to learning activities, here you've given what the expectations are for the students, making sure that they have the fundamentals, the crash course in world history, civil rights. I'm just going to click on that, and it's a you really can't do anything about the advertisement of YouTube. But when I first started watching this, I was a little bit. Let's skip the ad here. I was a little bit not sure where it was going, and so I wasn't really sure where it was going. But it comes back to it. Here, your civil rights timeline. You notice here that one of your links doesn't work. So the in one of the courses I took earlier on, it talked about keeping a separate listing of all your links that you could check from time to time to make sure they're updated. And then we have famous civil rights activists here, and this one, it's it covers a number of civil rights activists, and the again, the timeline is still late, mostly late or middle 1900s. But I'm very happy to see that Frederick Douglass is listed here, and Martin Delany as well. So in looking at what you've covered, you definitely met my you kind of what you covered the area that I was concerned that often gets left out. And then the civil rights movement summary here talks about 100 years, and so I'm very pleased, because oftentimes the American civil rights movement does not cover earlier time. So I'm very, very pleased at that. And then looking at your learning activity, let's see here, we go through what your research is, and discover an area of interest. It's kind of hard for high schoolers, particularly if you're in a diverse community, or kids that don't have a strong background. One of the things that I noticed with my daughter was I had her watch Eyes on the Prize, because her concept of African American history was Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. She didn't know a lot about the civil rights. She didn't know about the bus boycott. So having the students pick an area of interest might be a little too open-ended. You may want to give them a little bit of context here, and then having them do the DIGO. I think that's how you pronounce it, DIGO, and have them find some sources. I think that'll help them to narrow the field. But again, my experience with DIGO is it's an acquired taste, so it's a challenge to utilize other people's bookmarks, because it takes almost as much effort to kind of weed through what people have posted as it does just do a Google search. So that's just my own personal experience with DIGO. And then you're having the screenshots, and then giving these down here is very helpful for students to understand primary sources in particular, and that'll help them in a number of areas, not just this course, but in doing term papers and as such. So for this learning activity number one, I think you've encompassed very well the social bookmarking, as well as the giving them the background information that they need. Something to consider, just something brief, is in terms of navigation. I'm here in learning activity 1, and there's no way to get back to where I was. I mean, up here I can go here or over here to learning activities, but if had I not gone through the page before the screencast, I would have probably just gone here to the back button. So it's helpful sometimes just to have a button, because we read from top to bottom, to click here to get back, but having it up here is definitely helpful. So going here to learning activity 2, create, is where the students will be forming the group. And I'm not that familiar with Edmodo, well, not really at all. And it talks about here you can form interest groups. So in clicking here, you look at the tags that appear from Learning Activity 1 and what topics you want to study in Activity 2. So I guess in theory, the students would be able to see from Activity 1 what they would want based on the other posting, and then they would form their groups. It might be a little difficult for some, particularly if something they're interested in, no one else forms a group. That happens in every class. Um, so typically it works itself out. All right. And then going to their workspaces, they're going to work in their workspaces here. And the curation. This was the first time in this class I've done curation, so it may be beneficial to kind of go through what curation really means. Here you kind of talk about, it's coming up here, you kind of talk about the criteria for effective curation, but it's a lot of text, and kind of overwhelming maybe for high schoolers. Perhaps a curation on curation might be helpful. If you were to give them a curation so they could see what a curation would look like. That's just something I would do. If yeah. Anyway, so I'm liking the ebook because it gives them a sense of what publishing is about and working with others and working in groups, and then the narrated video and the options that they have for that as well. And then working on curating and planning topic in our class 543 we did our curation individually, although we did work on the curating, the evaluation tool. So it'd be interesting to see how curation works in a group sense. So that's kind of an exciting thing to do, because it will definitely encourage discussion and collaboration, as will the ebook, and narrating the ebook, making sure, like here, that the entire book must be narrated. Interesting. I think that I may actually steal that for what I'm doing later on in life. I like that idea. And then your assignment submission is pretty straightforward. One thing that you may want to consider in the Google Docs is letting them know that you can see the revision history and that you'll monitor the revision history, so that it shows that you're monitoring, but also gives you a sense of who's contributing in the Google documents. But I really like the way you're forcing them to work together to create something, and create something from their experience and from what they've read. The guidelines here are also helpful. Well, they're the same criteria, but they're helpful in terms of setting the stage. But again, in explaining curation, especially at the high school level, you may want to have an example or something that would give them a sense of what it's about. And in fact, I should have done that in my group, in our project. I should have been paid more attention to that. So as I go through this, I'm kind of reflecting back on what I did in our mini unit, and also what I plan on doing when I create classes in the future. But it looks like you've hit the curation here, as well as the student collaboration. Well, I like the reflection, what they got from the unit, individually as well as group, and then the peer review. The only thing is, because this comes at the end, I'm not sure how you're going to monitor their course interactions, and how you're going to make sure that they're on task. This is a good idea to have them do the reflection, because it'll help them in the future. You actually say that here, how we use it in the future, and then also help them in future group work here, and being able to review their peers. It's an important part of like what we're doing in this very assignment. It's an important part because you learn a lot when you review your peers about yourself, because the things that you have, the expectations you have for your peers, that voice in the back of your head kind of goes, well, did I do that? Did I do that? Did I do that? And just in looking at the review for this unit, I find myself thinking back, did I do that? Did I do that? And did I do that? So overall, I like the way the peer review and the reflections are, and your contact information here. Overall, I'm excited about the unit. The only thing is, I'm not sure in some of the elements that we were to cover. Like I said, how are you going to monitor um, the and make announcement and summarize the student contribution? So that part is missing. And then how the course is managed, I didn't really get a sense of that. I like the learning activities and the Edmodo platform. It's pretty straightforward. I may think about using it. I have used Haiku and Moodle in the past, and I kind of like those. I've also used WizIQ, but I think Edmodo is definitely something that to be considered. And you've covered the expectations and the objectives and the interaction. Like I said, the only area that I see where you didn't hit all of the the benchmarks that the professor set out was the monitoring the students, but everything else you hit. So if I were to look at course description, objectives, and expectations on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give that a 10. And let's see, for your student and course content creation and how they'll be used, a scale of 1 to 10, also a 10. Student interaction, how they collaborate with each other, I'll probably give that about a 9.5. I think the students need a little bit more direction in terms of, I mean, you covered all the basics, but I'd be more comfortable if the students got a little bit more guidance. The course interactions, you did talk about course tags from the Digio, but I'm not clear on how you would do that. So, I mean, as an educator, I'm sure you'll do it, but in terms of that, the highest I could go there would be about an 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. And that's because the structure of the class makes it easy to just easily implement that. And then for the sample learning activities, I would also give that a 10. So out of 50 points, I'm not sure what our score would be, but I guess I can just double it. So that would be 38, and then that would be 47.5. So that would be about 95% is what I would score this as. So overall, I think you've done an outstanding job with the American Civil Rights Movement. I especially like that you have covered the earlier times of civil rights going back to the Reconstruction era. I also like the way in which you have the students work together in groups to create something that will last, and something that they develop together, because it'll involve collaboration in the typical sense of let's work together on this project, but it also encourages them to look for things that interest them, which may be different than that which interests their group members. The only areas that I see where you may need to or you didn't meet the requirements was in the monitoring, and I also think that it would have been helpful to give them a little bit more structure for the the topic areas that they were working on. Like I said before, it's such a broad topic, and for students who don't have a lot of experience in civil rights, they may have a hard time picking out something that interests them because they wouldn't have the perspective, or picking out something that's not in the typical 28 days of Black history. So there's a chance that this could be a shallow project because they wouldn't have the background to go deeper. So I think they need a little bit more guided assistance. And like I said, the monitoring, I couldn't tell from the structure of your lesson how you were going to monitor, and that was one of the elements of the major elements of the lesson. So in terms of course description, objectives, and expectation, I think here you've covered them all. So I would definitely give you a 10 in that area. In terms of the course creation and giving the students the background on the different forms of social media, from the Edmodo, Diego, Pinterest, Google Docs, YouTube, and WordPress, I think you've covered them all here, and you've given the students enough background resources to be able to utilize them, and here having them kind of jump right into it. Again, this is the part where when you're saying about an issue or an event, you're not being really specific. So I think they may have a hard time grasping that. But overall, for this section, I would also give a 10. For the student interaction, I give a 9.5, particularly because it doesn't really give them enough guidance, as I said before, in helping them to put something together. But you did a very good job of having them create documents and the ebook with narration. That's a great idea. Like I said earlier, that probably will be something that I'll use when I create courses myself. So just in general, I like how you did that. So about a 9.5 in that area. The course monitoring, I know Edmodo has the ability to do it, so I know that you can do the course monitoring. You did mention some course tags and hashtags before, but I'm not clear how you intend to monitor it and collect information and disseminate announcements. So that wasn't really clear. I'm not sure how you would have done that in Modo. What I had to do, what my group members and I did, was we created a separate document to kind of explain how we would do that, because the platform itself didn't allow for it, and it's not something you would list for students. So because you have the ability to do it, and I'm sure that you could do it, but so that would be, I'd give you an 8.0 for that one, and primarily you have the ability, it's just that it's not listed here. And then lastly, for the sample learning activities, I like the way you had them constructed, and I would give you a 10. So altogether, that's a 47.5, and that's 95%. So good job, guys. I really appreciate you taking on this topic.